This is the Cedar Creek Church Living It Out podcast, a midweek reminder where we discuss key takeaways and principles from the weekend message to help you live out the truth that you matter.
Well, welcome to the Living It Out podcast. I'm your host, Ben Bacher, here with Marna Ward. Marna, it's good to have you back.
How are you? Yeah, it's good to be back.
We were in the series At the Movies, and we just finished our second week. How is the series going for you?
You know, so At the Movies for me was like, this could be really great. And I was a little nervous as to how it all was going to come together. And even sitting in the auditorium last week, I was sort of like, well, Lord, okay, you know. And then I think there was just something so powerful about using these modern day stories to kind of bring to life these principles that are throughout Scripture that we see in real people's lives. And you know, I think that's what was like, oh my gosh, like this is what the stories did when Jesus was telling parables. He was bringing what were fictional characters and scenarios to situations that helped you to see it better or differently. And so that's kind of what happened to me. It was like, oh my gosh, I think that's like you started to feel things with the characters, or this week especially, I felt like some of the scenes in Passengers just really, you were sort of riveted by this idea of being alone and some of the things that we're going to get to. So that has been the experience for me. Is I am captivated by the ways that it breathes life into, and movies always do this, right? But all the more so that when we can tie it with a principle that really is straight from Scripture and that we see happening there.
Yeah. I love it. I think when I first started going to Cedar Creek, which was a number of years ago, Lee Powell, our founding pastor, would bring in some movies, not in the way we're doing it now. Yeah. He might show a clip or do something like that. Yep. And I was like, wow, you know, it's such a great way to teach a lesson, you know, to elevate attention in life, or, you know, talk about a way to resolve these things. Yeah. And so I really enjoy it and love the idea. The lobbies have been a lot of fun too.
Oh my gosh, yes. I hope everybody that's listening to this has had an opportunity to be here in our lobbies and experience At the Movies. And depending on the campus, like they've all got their
Yeah. We had Seth was with us last week and was talking about South Toledo. They have like a Star Wars theme, and so that's a lot of fun.
I did have somebody say, so is one of the movies Star Wars? Because I totally saw that South has something Star Wars. Is one of the movies Jurassic Park? Because I saw that White House, like they were like trying to figure out if like one of the movies was. And I was like, well, those are good ideas, like, you know, but I was like, oh, I didn't even think about how you would start to sort of look into some of that as whether it was clues as to what we were going to do. And so I don't know.
The first week we were back in the kids area, and my kids were back there with bags of popcorn, eating popcorn. And I'm like, I look at one of the Dream Team members and I'm like, have you had a lot of popcorn on the floor? And she's like, well, actually nobody's had popcorn back here yet. Shoot. And I look at them and I'm like, where'd you get the popcorn? And they're like, Mom brought it to us. So I'm like, oh, great. We're bringing popcorn. Not that I don't know that we're not allowed to do it or not. I don't know. But
oh
I was
my
like,
gosh, that's great. I love it.
They loved the popcorn, and so did I.
Yeah,
so it's great.
Yeah, I do think it has felt almost like a little bit of an escape where you can, I am one who doesn't love to see movies. And I sort of love that you feel like you get to see the whole movie without seeing the whole movie, you know?
Yeah. Now, last week in the podcast, our icebreaker was like, what was the first movie you remember seeing at a theater? So today we're going to ask a question that might be difficult for you to answer. Okay. What is the last movie you saw in a theater?
Oh my gosh. Especially with the pandemic.
I know.
It's like, Knives Out.
Okay. But not in the theater, but that was the last movie you saw.
I feel like I saw it in the theater.
I don't think that was.
Did
it
it
out
make it?
Oh, I have no idea. I saw it on
I'm
Netflix,
pretty sure that I saw it in the theater, like I feel like maybe it came out Christmas 2019, you know, like right before now I feel like if we had 2 minutes, I would look up when it came out. But I'm pretty sure it was Knives Out that Eric and I went to see, like, you know, date night between Christmas, somewhere in that time frame. That's going to be my guess, at least. How about you?
You know, I don't know. I don't think I can answer this question. I cannot remember the last movie
in a theater?
I saw in a theater.
Oh
I know
gosh.
I took my daughter to a movie and I remember falling asleep for a little bit. But I don't remember
what it was. Well,
I mean, it was
for good
probably,
reason.
yeah.
You took a nap, so there
I'm
you
sure.
go.
And I mean, she's 9 now, so if I can't remember the last one, she
had to have been, what, 6, 7? Somewhere in there?
I do know we took her first movie was The Star, which is like a Christmas
I haven't
movie
seen
about
that one,
Jesus.
but I do hear people
they
say it's
embellish
really
quite
good.
a bit, but it's that was good. So I'll say that's the last. It's the last one I can remember.
There you go.
So
oh gosh,
so that's good.
What a time.
So this week we had a fun movie, a movie I had never seen before called The Passengers.
Yeah.
And I thought there was a lot of great things that were brought up from that. In the movie, the main character Jim is in a spaceship.
Mm-hmm.
He's like
signed up to do this.
Signed up to travel to a new world, and it's going to take 120 years to get there.
The premise is wild. Like,
there's 5,000 passengers. They're all sleeping, and they're not supposed to wake up until 4 months before their arrival time.
Yes.
He wakes up 90 years early. Can you imagine?
It's literally, I love the premise of this thing. Like, I mean, I think that's what it was too, even watching the movie. I love how Ben sort of prompted us, like, imagine if this was your choice. Mm-hmm. What would you do? It really heightened the tension and pressure around, like, instead of saying, well, gosh, I can't believe he did that. It's like, what would I do? Yeah.
I love just that idea. He's on the ship. Like, I don't think he realized right away he was the only one. So he like goes to the meeting where they're going to tell him about everything, and he's all of a sudden he's like, hey, wait a minute, I have a question. Where's everybody? And so he kind of gets acclimated to everything, and they've got great facilities and a spa and a gymnasium and
everything you could ever want, right?
Lonely, talks to the bartender, and the bartender's like, well, just make the best of it. But before long, there's kind of something he can't get over.
Yeah, he's alone.
Yeah. So you want to talk a little bit about just that idea of why it's not good to be alone and how we were created for something different?
Yeah, I think that was the incredible tie for us to God's truth and what he tells us all the way back in Genesis is that in some ways this was Adam's life, right? He had everything he could ever want. He had the best food. He had, animals. He had wonderful surroundings. And yet even God said it is not good for you to be alone, and recognized and answered and spoke into that space, potentially in some ways that what I love is that God could also answer it, right? Is he could identify what was good and what was still missing. And he filled it. He filled that with Eve. And so there was something almost like a little anxiety inducing in watching some of those scenes when you put yourself in that, to think, I can't get off the ship. I'm here all by myself. Wonderful, right? Like when he's doing the basketball and he's like eating all his stuff and like whatever. And it's like, and just that whole thought. But there was something in me that was like, that would be, very, very disconcerting.
Yeah.
We know what it's like to live with others and be in community, so that's potentially what's a little different too. But man,
I loved the picture that was kind of played out. Like he's having fun. He's jumping on the bed. He's like I don't even remember. He did a spacewalk and all this stuff, and then all of a sudden, like, I think he's eting his bowl of cereal, and you just kind of see the realization, like his beard grows long, and he's just like, this is, I'm gonna be here forever by myself.
Yeah. So I think that the way that was depicted too, and some of what comes to mind, I think, for us is that, like you said, as you start to watch that lesson play itself out, is that what does it lead him to? What are these tough decisions that he has to make? And how does that help us to understand not only God's relationship with us, but some of what our circumstances speak into our lives, some of how all of that is shaped, for sure. Yeah.
As the movie plays out, he wakes I don't know her name.
Aurora.
Okay. Wakes Aurora up, and they get to know each other and everything, and it all plays out. But in the very, very end of the movie, like, he can't do something without her help. And I thought that was a great, like, kind of picture of why we need each other too. Like, we're stronger when we're with other people, and we have other people in our life. We can accomplish more. They can encourage, support, all those things.
Yeah, we're hardwired for relationship and community. That's how God designed us. And I think in order to, one, he wants us in relationship with him, and as an outpouring of that, to be in relationship with others. Mm-hmm. And that's in large part what allows us to be able to first our relationship with him, to be content, and no matter what's happening around us, to be fulfilled by him. And yet that matters when we're living with others, and we're not meant to do that alone. And I mean, Paul talks about it in Philippians, even where, and I know Ben talked about this with specifically Philippians 4:13 and some of the verses surrounding that, but that idea of being able to do everything through Christ who gives me strength. And that, Ben talked about that the secret to that is no matter what's happening, we know that Christ is with us, and that all of that can help us in our moments of weakness. And yet I think there were some of the realization too, is that he gave us others for a reason too, that we don't have to do it alone. Again, that wiring, we do have to really think about and be intentional about. And all of these things ultimately in a life, you want to have relationship in that you're impacting one another and having an opportunity to share with one another. And I know that can be really tough for people who are going through a divorce, somebody who has lost someone, like the deep grief of when we are not in community, or when it's broken for whatever reason, can be so difficult too. But like you said, Jim makes sort of an ultimate sacrifice. He comes all the way right with her. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about was Ben's like, Paul, he's in prison, and he's saying, I've learned to be content in everything, every situation. And then he says, I can do all things through Christ. And that's what, ultimately why he can be content. And I loved how Ben talked about that. He's like, we can trust Jesus and God because of what he went through in order to have a relationship with us. And he kind of pointed out, in the movie, Jim, risked his life. He's like, I'm going to go out and go on that spacewalk, fix it, and I might not come back. Yeah. And like there was that trust, seeing what somebody will go through in order to, have your best interest in mind.
Right. And that is that was a concept that was completely initiated by Christ. I mean, we sort of take some of that for granted a little bit. Like, well, of course you would lay down your life for another, or there would be this sense in us. But it really wasn't until Jesus initiated the sort of things that he did, and this upside down kingdom that we live in, where that became more of the marker. Than someone who had all of the things.
Right.
And certainly when you look at the Old Testament versus the New Testament and the way that things were talked about, it was always about humility and sacrifice and love. And yet when Jesus demonstrated it for us, Paul says it, that's what gave us the strength and will give us the strength to do that for others.
Right.
Yeah.
One of my favorite characters in the movie was Arthur.
Yeah, the android that was, the bartender.
I was talking with somebody about this, and they were kind of like, of all the things that they could have, they have all this technology. They make this super amazing android, and all he can do is like give advice and mix drinks. Like they could have made a doctor or somebody who could like.
Well, that's a good point.
Like, hey, this is how you go back to sleep or something like that. A bartender, but he had some great advice, and one of the things he told him was he said sometimes you can get so hung up on where you are that you forget to make the most of where you are today, or you get hung up on where you want to be. So he said, take a break, don't worry about what you can't control. And I thought that was very key to being content as well. Like so often we're just stuck on something that we are trying to achieve, or something just we're not where we want to be, and we lose
and we get so focused on that,
worried about it, like why don't I have this, or why can't I get to that place, and instead of just trusting in Jesus, what he's done, and just, hey, he's in control.
Yep. That I take a deep breath, because I think this is such a continuous lesson in my own life about surrender, about trust, about love, about the things that in so many ways are the intangibles of our relationship with God and with each other. They're so real, and yet they're not things that I can just pin right down right here for you, kind of thing. And I think that the way that this movie weaves some of that in such powerful ways too was like, because he broke trust with her, right?
Yeah.
He had a secret, and so some of that was just weaved deeply into these two characters in terms of, do they trust one another? What does love look like? And some of those sort of things that, I don't know, it was really moving in some of those parts to think, what would that be like? And at the same time in our own lives today that we experience those same questions, and trying to move closer to God, but also doubting some of that, and wanting to take control back and going, well, there's got to be something I can do here. So I think it does cause us to really reflect on those parts of our life, and how do we, in a lot of ways, really live out this Philippians 4:10-13, and how does this actually look in my everyday life?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
We always end these Living It Out podcast want to talk a little bit about like a next step or something that you can do.
Yep.
One of the questions we had in the discussion questions encouraged you to take a minute and identify some situations or circumstances that cause discontentment in your life. So you just mentioned it's hard to pin that down, but
well, that I could probably pin down. You ready? My dog Nala. No, I'm just kidding.
No kidding.
Yeah.
So think about things that, situations that you're discontent, and then, really think about, what is my next step? And obviously we talked a lot about trust and what Jesus has gone through, and just kind of put that towards some of those discontent areas of discontent in your life as well.
Yeah, I think that's such a great exercise to do pin them down, do write them down. And I think over time, sometimes you can get to some of the questions of like, why am I so discontent with this? Like, what is really stirring for me? And I think over time, sometimes we can get down to some of those places where it's like, man, sometimes I find myself in my journal time, like, I just don't want to be doing this. I don't like it. I don't want to do it. I want to be somewhere else doing something else. And the reality is that that's my moment of surrender, is when I'm so resistant and I'm so fighting whatever it is that's happening, that I have to go, okay, but you are here. And there is something here for you too. And I can only control me. And so, Lord, help me to see, repent from the things that I think are right here, and help me to do it your way. So
that's great.
Yeah.
So the other kind of portion of this talk that we've had today is the idea that we were created to be in community.
Yeah.
What are some opportunities that we have here at the church for that?
Yeah. Our primary way, I think you've heard us say it if you've been listening, is certainly groups, but that is really the primary way. And I know it's November, something or other. It's the Teens Week. Thanksgiving is next week. Most of us are like hunkering down for the holidays.
Yep.
But I think in a lot of ways, this is where the intentionality comes in, is that January, we start a new group semester. And this might be just the time where, starting in November, you put on your calendar in mid-January, I'm going to search for a group and I'm going to join it. I'm just going to do it this semester. Or maybe it's that you've really been called to lead a group and create community in those ways, because sometimes those are the places where we actually grow the most. And so whichever one it is, it's like, if you think about that now and really think about, who can I put around the table? What kind of things would we study? How, or do, like, it might not be a Bible study. It might be that it's a free market group. We're going to go bowling, or we're going to do curling, or we're going to do, like, sometimes that just takes some planning. But I think that intentionality, both of writing down the areas where I'm really getting tripped up, and then also saying, okay, I'm going to bring others around me, and I'm going to do it in a very intentional way starting in January. I just think that sometimes it takes us that long and that intentional sort of step to be able to do it. Another place is certainly Growth Track. That can be a great way to just connect with others, start taking some steps into purpose, and that may really lead you to kind of understand what type of community you're going to be passionate about, and where you can start to live that out.
Very good. I love that. I think of groups. the semesters just sneak up on you.
Yes.
Like, wow, it's here already. So to be able to think ahead of time and be like, okay, who are the people in my life that I could do a group with? Or, what could we be doing? I love the idea of curling.
Yeah.
I've never done that. I know there's a place in Bowling Green you can do it.
There's a place in BG that can do it.
So yeah,
just do different winter stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So definitely be thinking about that. I think that's great.
Mm-hmm.
So this weekend we continue the series.
We do.
What's the movie? No.
Oh, yeah. So At the Movies, week 3.
Week 3, I know. I'm excited.
I'm excited too.
So be looking forward to that.
Yeah,
be
please
thinking
come
about
back.
who you can invite. At the Movies, I think, is a great series to extend an invite. So be praying and thinking about who you can bring with you this coming weekend.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
Well, thank you so much, Marna, for spending some time talking through this. And for you who took some time out of your day to make the Living It Out podcast part of your day, thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
And we look forward to seeing you soon.